This is Things Police See, first-hand accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. It is I, Old Gingerface, here with you as always. Thank you guys for joining me. Welcome to all the Sergeant Steve subscribers who have slid over here to get the long-form interviews of police officers from around the country and the world. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for checking it out. Thank you for the new Patreon supporters. The supporters, if you give Sergeant or above, you will get a shout out on the show. We do that at the end. So listen for your name. Really appreciate all that you've done for me on both channels. Really been an incredible ride so far, and I could not be happier about it. Today's episode, very pumped for this one. Friend of the show. He's been on, I think, 2 or 3 times by now. He's a well-known author. He did many years as a sergeant for the Milwaukee Police Department. You know him. You love him. The great Patrick O'Donnell. Patrick!
Wow, what an intro. Again, the bar is way up here, mister. Thank you so much. It's always a blast coming on and saying howdy to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So you just wrote your 11th book, Police Stories, The Rookie Years, and that is out already. We'll put a link in the show notes and all that, but I mean, are you done? How many more of these things how many do you got left in you, man?
We'll see. I already started writing the sequel to it. It's going to be Police Stories, Street Cop to Sergeant. So I'm going to try and do the career progression and all the crazy stuff, that happens to you while you're going through all that. So this book is I didn't realize it at first, but they put me like in the worst neighborhood in the city, working midnight to 8. And I had no clue. I thought the whole city was like this. I didn't live there. I wasn't from there, and and I'm like, whoa, hey, this is kind of crazy. But it's through a rookie's eyes. So I thought that'd be kind of a neat way to do it.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. Do your audio sound okay to you? Okay, we're back.
Right,
so
cool.
the new book, Police Stories Rookie Years, you're saying it's about the beginning. It's about like you're in your first district for the first time and what it's like and all that good stuff and the wild things that popped up.
Absolutely. And I just, talking to other cops from, the district or, in different cities. And I just had such a bizarre rookiedom. I almost had to shoot and kill somebody the first week I was on the job,
Dang.
on the street. And we talked about this before, I go from almost shooting this guy, trying to get a dying declaration, and then watching the doctor in the trauma center doing open heart massage on this guy. And I'm just like, this is like day 3 or 4 on the street. And I'm like, holy, wow. Is it going to be like this all the time? You're like, whoa, this is nuts.
What are the districts like in Milwaukee? Is there truly like an upscale neighborhood where you can go to and like just not, no, it's a city. You're always going to have calls, but there's a place you can kind of just chill out more.
Well, I worked in a district. The first one that I worked at was, I thought, the perfect district because you had multi-million-dollar mansions on the lake and you had just straight up ghetto. It was like the poorest part of the city, all in one district. So obviously, the east side was, right on the lake. There was upscale restaurants and the university was there. There was all kinds of cool, like I said, cool restaurants, nightlife, etc. And then you would go west a couple of miles and you were deep into the worst neighborhoods in the city, probably arguably in the country. So
I've heard that
was a ton of fun to be working there, because if you wanted a little bit of relief from all the silliness, because I didn't realize this until I started working there. You're constantly surrounded by gunfire at night. There was people popping off rounds all the time. That was not unusual. It got so bad, they installed shot spotters.
Yep.
It's these covert like listening devices for gun calls for people firing off guns. And we would have dedicated cars citywide that would just chase gun calls all night long. That's all they did.
I don't think people realize that about major cities, that the amount of gunplay that goes on at night, especially early morning, Like we had a guy transfer out to the country where I work who was a college cop in downtown Springfield, Massachusetts. And he still had the Shot Spotter app on his phone. He still had access.
Yeah.
So he was
Okay.
over visiting our police department, and he's like, "Hey, you want to see what went on last night in Springfield?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I got the Shot Spotter app still. They haven't kicked me off of it." It blew my mind. I mean, he's at a college campus in the middle of Springfield, and it's like 3:30 a.m. and it uses AI to label it. So it's automatic gunfire,
wow.
and you hit play, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
and this was happening almost every night in Springfield, Mass, which is only like 175,000 people.
Wow.
It's got a really bad. It's a very violent city, but I only live 45 minutes from there, and I had no clue. I don't know anybody down there. Yeah, I had no clue there's guns going off all night.
I know. It's like at first you're like, wow, what's going on here? And then it was like, it becomes white noise unless it's like really close. Then,
That's
the hair on the back, then the hair on the back of your neck starts going up, but it's always in the background. It's just, from I'd say like midnight to about 3 or 4 in the morning, people are shooting guns off. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's almost like the caricature of like when they do a skit in like New York City, you hear the siren, then you hear like, ah! This is 2 people having a cup of coffee in a diner. It's like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, you don't panic. It's just the way it is. I mean, I remember one time my partner and I responded to a shooting. There's a guy in a doorway, and he just knocked on the door because he was shot. He was shot like in the leg, and he made it to this doorway, and the people who lived there, they all had warrants, so they took off because they knew we would be coming. But they gave him a pillow, so that was nice.
Oh, yeah, very thoughtful.
So, fire department pulls up, they start working on him, and like half a block away, pa-pow, pa-pow, pa-pow. So the fire lieutenant, he's like, all right, we're gone. And he's like, what about me? He says, you're going to sit there and bleed. He said, I'm not going to get shot, and my guys aren't going to get shot. And our first thing was, we have to go run towards that gunfire and find out what's going on. So this guy's just laying there. He's like, what about me? What about me? I said, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
You're being triaged.
Exactly.
Low priority.
Yes. So yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
If you're in a district that's, slower or has less of that going on, you must always be getting pulled into the neighboring district where they need help, or no? Were they pretty strict about patrol sectors?
That went through many evolutions in my 25 years. When I was a rookie, yes, we would have other districts helping us out with, we call them hitches, assignments, just because of the sheer volume of assignments that you would have. And if there was a slow district and they were having a slow night, guess what? Switch over to channel 1, you're going to be taking assignments in District 5 if you were District 4. You didn't have a choice. And then obviously the captains of those districts were getting angry because the people who lived there had zero police protection. And It took forever for the cops to get there. And what opened my eyes, I started out at District 5, super busy, super crazy. I got transferred to District 3, pretty much the same without the lake. It was just kind of depressing. It really sucked, actually. And I promoted to sergeant. I went down to District 2, which was on the south side. And I thought that it was like I'd be watering lawns and walking dogs and closing garages. Yeah, exactly. And I was totally wrong. There was more shootings down there than there was on the north side. But for whatever reason, you just didn't hear about it all that much. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'm used to. Okay, cool. Then after 17 years of that, I went to District 6, which was the slowest district in the city. It was on the far southwest side. And, and it's day shift to boot. And I'm like, I hate this. I can't stand it. The only reason I went days and went there is because I went through a brutal divorce and I wanted to see my kids. So I had to be day shift. So here I am. And remember my first day, my lieutenant calls me over the air and he says, yeah, could you see me in my office? And I'm like, what did I do wrong? So, I go in there. He's like, close the door. And I'm like, Lute, it's been 4 hours. What could I have possibly? And I didn't talk to anyone for 4 hours. He says, I got to complain about you. And I said, what did I do? He said, somebody was out watering their grass and saw that you weren't wearing your seatbelt. I'm like, you've got to be kidding.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And I said, so this is what this has become. But I learned to appreciate it. We talked a little bit before we hit record, where this was the first time I was ever in 17 years, I ever was able to sit down for 15 minutes and have a meal. That never happened before, in a restaurant. I'm like, oh my God, it was just totally foreign to me.
Yeah.
So, and people were waving and they were using all 5 fingers. It was, yeah, they're smiling and stuff. And then you're investigating crimes where there was actual victims of crime.
And people cooperating probably and giving statements and.
Oh yeah, they're jumping out of their skin. They can't wait to talk to you. And it's like, okay, this is weird. And I remember 2 separate occasions. I was talking to some buddies last night about this, where I get called for kidnappings. And in the hood, you never had a legit kidnapping, or very, very few. It was always a bunch of, baby mama drama, blah, blah, blah. The call that comes over is not the call that you're responding to. There's always some little wrinkle or whatever. And, it's like kidnapping. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. And it's like this hysterical woman is at the gas station. It's a cold Wisconsin day, and her kid is in the car seat, in the back seat. She keeps the car running, and she runs in for a pack of smokes or a candy bar or whatever it is. Joey Sluggo jumps in the car and takes off with the baby in back.
Oh,
that happened to me twice. And both times Joey Sluggo would go about, 10 blocks. And it's like, oh shoot, what do I do now? And they'd unbuckle the car seat and put the baby in the car seat on the side of the road.
What a piece of crap.
Oh yeah. Every time. So I started feeling really good about working there because I could actually, quote unquote, make a difference and help like real citizens of, and just, these were legit crime victims, and we were there to help them. Not that didn't happen on the north side, but you might as well put on some waders, because you're going to be going through some crap, because, this guy got shot because he was slinging dope in the wrong neighborhood, or he was trying to rip off a dope dealer, or, the other guy was just faster with a gun. So are these real victims? Yeah, kind of, sort of. But, these were very clear-cut victims on the south side. And obviously, we didn't have the volume of calls. So I was working with skeleton crews all the time.
Yeah, it is funny to think about that. Like, you're servicing victims that played a significant role in their victimhood versus just like an actual ordinary citizen who pays their taxes and expects the service of the police and all that. That is so weird. It must get so it's hard to compel you to want to do the investigation when like nobody cares but you, including the victim, that type of thing.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. And I never had daytime robberies, bank robberies, pharmacy robberies. I never responded to one when I was working nights because they weren't open. Now all of a sudden, it's like these places were getting robbed all the time. Like, a bank robbery? I thought, there'd be an army of FBI agents there and all kinds of cool stuff would be going on. Nope, not at all. Unless somebody was shot or it was like a serial bank robber, then the FBI might send one guy.
Right.
And they wouldn't show up till like an hour later.
I noticed that with the FBI in the last, since kind of the evolution of what they do, where they kind of do more like intelligence work now rather than law enforcement. That used to be like one of the first calls when you had like a bank robbery or attempted bank robbery, but they're not interested at all anymore. Like you said, unless it's going to have some status in the newspaper, they're really not helping you any. But back in the day, like when I first started, or when my dad was a cop, like they were always involved and available for bank robberies. That was like their jam, bank robberies. And they're just completely bowed out of it 100% now. They don't care.
Well, it might also be resources. Like you said, there's only so many FBI agents, and if you got terrorism stuff, if you got this going on or that going on, that gets put on the back burner.
Right. It's like back in the day when we used to call ICE or immigration or whatever when we had somebody who was here illegally, and they would legit on the phone say, are they from the Middle East? Be like, no, it's it's a guy from Brazil. Click. Don't care. They only cared if his name was Mohammed. That was like the only thing they would come down from Boston to grab somebody for.
Yeah, after 9/11, like you said, if you had all of a sudden you have all these people on some terrorist watch list. I had a cop that, stops somebody and says, hold and detain terrorist watch list. I'm like, oh my God, we got Osama bin Laden. This is awesome.
This is real.
And we actually had FBI agents responded very quickly. And after like half an hour, they're like, let him go. We don't want him.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, thanks for bursting our bubble here, mister. I thought we just solved some huge caper or something. And it's like, that was a big nothing.
Yeah. The NCI hits go off all the time. And it's rarely the right person. If any information matches at all, like even just like the middle name, that's like, wah, wah, you're like, oh my gosh, a dangerous felon, illegal immigrant. And it's like, nope, that's just, they just have the same middle name. It's like, what the hell?
Correct.
Be a little less dramatic. Patrick, I wanted to ask you about the Jeffrey Dahmer case. And because it recently got back in the spotlight because of that TV show they did, Dahmer. Mm-hmm. I think it was called Dahmer.
Yes, yes it was.
Kind of, I didn't watch a bunch of it, but from hearing people review it on other podcasts and stuff, it sounds like they kind of made it, they made him kind of sexier than maybe he was. Like people were saying like, oh, the actor that plays him is, they're like people were alluding to that. He was like, kind of like good looking and charismatic and stuff. I was like, this is not anything I've ever heard of Jeffrey Dahmer, but okay. Must've been a Hollywood spin.
It's a Hollywood spin for sure. I worked with 2 detectives that did the actual interrogation of Dahmer.
Really?
And I gotta say, those 2 guys were some of the best detectives I have ever, when I was new, if I pinched somebody for like a homicide or a robbery or whatever, you would take them to the detective bureau, and one of the detectives we called it QP, question the prisoner. They'd QP him. And, our QP rooms were glorified broom closets. They're small, man. So I would bring in the prisoner and they would do the interrogation, and I would listen by the door to try and like pick up because everybody knew who the Dahmer detectives were. There was no big mystery to it. And they were both homicide detectives, and they were really, really good at what they did. And there was so much fallout from the trial and the investigation. It was like earth shaking. There was shockwaves that went through the entire department, through the entire city, really. And one of the detectives wound up resigning. He had enough time to retire. I shouldn't say resign. He taught for a little bit, and he joined the Peace Corps.
Wow. As an older guy, that's strange.
Yeah. Yeah. He joined the Peace Corps, and he had like some demons, man. And he died of a heart attack like a couple years later.
Ugh.
One of the DAs that did the prosecuting wound up being a Jesuit priest. He left the DA's office. He says, I've never faced so much evil. This is crazy. And like I said, and Annie Schwartz, who was a friend of mine, was the reporter who broke the story. She had a cop that was a snitch. She said, Annie, you got to come down to, this apartment right now. It was like 2:00 in the morning. She says, there's a human head in a refrigerator. And she's like, oh, please. Because they were always pranking her and whatever. She says, I'm going back to sleep. They're like, no, don't go back to sleep. You need to get up and get over here now. Everybody's in shock. And it's like, okay. So she gets up. She goes there. She knows all the cops. And she put one foot in his apartment and she's like, I'm out. I'm done. She does an about face and runs out. And she said, this is Crazyville, USA.
Wow. How did how long were they on him for before they got him?
You know what? That's a great question. I think it was pretty quick. There was some near misses. There was that controversy where there was a naked Asian 16-year-old boy that was running down the street towards the cops. and the cops gave him back to Dahmer.
Oh, I never heard
And
that. That's crazy.
yeah, there was 3 cops that got fired immediately because of that. And there was a huge appeal, and they won their appeal. One cop was a rat. He did everything he could to save his own skin and, F the other 2. So they gave him a pass. And the other 2 got fired. But it was Chief Areola at the time. And,
It's an
obviously
unfortunate last name.
Yeah. Oh, when I was in the academy, he's like, how do you spell that? And of course, there was all kinds of bad jokes with that.
Yeah.
Yes. And he went on to Washington and had a horrible career there. He was just a terrible chief, just terrible. And they fire these 2 cops. And what happens is they win their appeal because the city didn't they didn't give them due process.
They just had a knee-jerk reaction.
Correct. And, this big long trial, this big appeal, and they won. They won millions of dollars. They got their jobs back. One cop got employed. He got hired by a smaller department and just stayed there for the rest of his career. The other cop actually opened a cop bar because when you were fired, all of your income is gone. He's got to support a family. So he opened a bar called Fuzzies, and it was just packed with police memorabilia. And I was in there more than one time because everybody wanted to support this guy because they knew that he got a raw deal. So he got his job back and he retired from the motorcycles. He was a motorcycle cop.
Wow. What was the story? What was their reasoning for giving the guy back to Dahmer?
They couldn't really understand what he was saying. And this neighborhood there was a lot of homosexuals that lived there. And they thought this 16-year-old was an adult. So it's 2 consenting adults. That's what they thought.
So like some kind of weird like sex play going on. They had a fight and then they were...
Correct. And in that district, that's just a Tuesday night. Some naked guy running down the road, okay. There's nothing unusual about, you'll turn your head and go, oh, look, there's a naked guy running down the road. All right. Not the first one you're going to see and not the last one you're going to see. And
he obviously ended up being eaten or put in a refrigerator or something.
Correct. They killed him. Dahmer killed him.
Oh, that was just, I can't imagine anybody not knowing him, but we have some younger people that listen. Dahmer would kill people and eat their bodies or specific parts of their body, right? Like kind of like the Hannibal Lecter character was based on him.
Correct. And he was a necrophiliac, so he'd have sex with the corpse. And he would put a corpse in bed with him. He would put a corpse in the shower with him. And he would try to turn them into living zombies. He'd inject their heads with acid. He'd drug them. He'd pick them up at gay bars. We have a gay bar district in Milwaukee. He'd go cruising and find somebody young or whatever. And it's like, hey, I want to take some Polaroid photos of you. Here, drink this first. And then before you know it, they're half out of it and he'd kill them. And he'd keep them as trophies. And he had a huge vat of acid that he would put the bodies into when he was done with them.
So a lot of movies legit took stuff from his actual life because that's been in a lot of different serial killer movies, vats of acid. Right. And
now, if you want to get a good lowdown on it, Annie Schwartz, like I said, friend of mine, she wrote the book. She was on my podcast a couple times. And I think the name of her book was Monster. She wrote a book about it. It's a lot more accurate.
I bet it's very I probably could not get through that book. I guarantee you. I don't like having that stuff in my mind.
It's incredibly disturbing. Like I said, it changed a lot of people's lives. But, going back to the detectives, I remember the first time this guy's name was Kennedy. Big Irish guy. He was 6'5". And I have a guy for, I think it was armed robbery or homicide. It was homicide. And I put him in this room and you handcuff him to the wall. There's a big O-ring there. And Kennedy walks in, throws his keys at him. He says, take those handcuffs off. You don't need those. And the guy's looking is this a setup? He says, no. He's, so he said, yeah, give me my keys. So he gives him the keys. Yeah, give me the handcuffs. Okay. All right. You're going to behave, right? Sure. It's just, all right, what's going on? But and it was nothing like what you would see on TV, how, it's like, I know you did this, screaming and, ranting and raving. And it's like,
Right.
he became his best friend.
Yeah. He
He was smooth as silk. And I'm just like, man, this guy is good. Holy cow. Wow.
Yeah. I had to go do the SA class, sexual assault investigator class. And they were saying, like, you got to do it. You got to, because the only way these sex offenders talk is if they can't feel like you're like judging them like the rest of society is going to, and you kind of got to be their buddy. And then that's exactly why not a ton of people can do it, because it's like,
it takes
yucky.
a very special person. Yeah, you feel like you should delouse or take a shower when you're done, and you're in there for hours with these people.
Yeah, building that trust with them.
Yep.
Shaking their hand, being like, hey, this, you know what? We watched like and heard a lot of cases, and it was like a lot of like, I get it, man. She's 14. She looks pretty good. Like kind of like I would have done it type of. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't do it, dude.
It's like you're looking at yourself third person, looking down. It's like, what am I saying? Oh my God, this is not me.
I have to go to confession.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought am I right in saying that one of the most disturbing things about Dahmer is that like he didn't have a very screwed up childhood? Wasn't he just kind of have a normal parents?
I believe his parents broke up, but it wasn't like he didn't have like constant abuse.
They weren't like putting cigarettes out on him and
right. Exactly. He's an anomaly. I've only seen, most criminals are dummies who make a mistake or keep on making the same mistake over and over. There's addiction. There's all different reasons for criminality.
Yeah, you don't feel like they're evil.
Correct. But I have looked in the eyes of evil, of just true evil. And I'm like, it shakes you to your core. You're like, how the hell did you do X, Y, or Z? And they've got zero remorse.
Yeah, that's hard to deal with. I had years ago, we had a kid that was grooming his young cousin to be, quote, a slave to his you-know-what. And we found his, the arresting officers brought him in the booking room. And I was just there I fingerprinted him, and they found his little diary about it, what he'd been doing for years. And the kid was like 18, 19. And like, as I'm fingerprinting him, he was like, how does it make you feel having to deal with somebody like me? And he's like looking me right in the eye. And I'm like, it's my job, man. We're just booking you. We're just booking you. And he's like, I imagine it would be uncomfortable knowing what, what I'm capable and what I've done, and just completely flatline, like no emotion about it. And right then I was like, yeah, this person has like no empathy. Like he's like a psychopath. Didn't care at all.
Talking to those detectives, like Dahmer, he was an asshole. There's no nice way of putting it. The guy was a dick. He wasn't smooth. He wasn't sexy. The guy was a dick. He was an asshole.
Was he?
He just was not a nice person.
So it makes more sense, at least. Well, at least he wasn't a sweet talker.
Yeah, no, he was not a sweet talker.
Damn, man.
These ain't Hollywood stories.
My main victim, he had stabbed him 50-something times, cut his ears off.
Real cops, real shootouts, real monsters.
If you deal with evil all the time, evil's going to leak into you.
Our gun muzzles were almost touching, and we both fired at exactly the same time.
No Hollywood bullshit. Just the stories they can't forget, and the price they paid.
If I don't get you today, I'm going to get you tomorrow.
If they're using their hands, you use your stick. If they're using the stick, you use your gun. We were taught to crush.
Come up. Pow, pow, hit him.
The shootouts that almost ended them, the monsters they hunted, and the scars they still carry. Cops, Rangers, DEA agents.
And I was not afraid to die. I was praying to die. I was afraid to live like that.
Telling it raw with no filter. These are the reasons we serve. Subscribe to hear their stories.
What about the 2016 riots?
That occurred
in Milwaukee.
That's so funny because we were talking about it last night. I went and had
No kidding.
cigars with, some guys that I used to work with, and we all worked through that time. What happened was there was a controversial police-involved shooting where a cop was in a foot chase. Bad guy pulls out a gun, starts shooting at the cop. Cop returns fire and keeps on shooting. And if you slow the body cam down frame by frame by frame by frame, then you're like, oh, okay, the gun was on the ground and the cop was still shooting. Now, this is explainable. It's called reactionary gap. Your finger and your brain are always not working in unison. And there's a gap. There's a gap in time there. And this is all happening in a second or 2 seconds.
Right.
So it was very controversial. And it was a super hot summer. Tensions were high. It's in one of the worst police districts in the area. And the community was getting very upset. The officer, it was a black man that was shot and killed by a black cop. So that wasn't exactly, like the issue. But the cop who shot him, the mayor and the chief had no love for, because it turns out he got mixed up in a deal where he was under investigation for drugging and raping young men.
The cop was?
So, yes.
Oh, wow.
So the DA had no love for this guy, and they charged him with homicide. But after the shooting, what happened was they kept the body there for an extraordinarily long amount of time. And part of that is because I forget what year, maybe it was by then, an outside agency would have to investigate any officer involved shooting where, the person's dead. So if I, say I respond to a bank robbery, bank robber comes out with an AK-47, starts shooting at me, I return fire, I kill him. A neighboring jurisdiction is going to do the investigation, not Milwaukee. So the problem with that is you just don't snap your fingers and they appear.
Right. You're relying
It takes
on
a
them.
lot of,
yeah.
It takes a lot of rigmarole, and things started getting really bad. And some veteran sergeants came up to the chief and was like, if you don't clean up this scene right now and leave, your city's going to be on fire. You just tell the tension in the air, you could just tell. And
Fair
it was the
warning.
Sherman Park riots. Yes. So of course, the chief was far more intelligent than, the street sergeants, et cetera, et cetera. And it all went to shit really fast. It was 3 days where I was working in that slow district on the south side, and I was working from 7 a.m. till about 3 a.m., 3 days in a row.
Ooh.
So, it was all hands on deck.
Is it like the same, like when I worked in LA, they would put, if something was going to pop off or was popping up, they would put out a standing order for all officers. No one's plain clothes. Everybody's in uniform and has their riot gear in the car. And would they put out an order like that? Like everybody suit up?
No, it's a little bit different. If you're a detective or if you're plain clothes, you stay in plain clothes. But they wouldn't do anything. They might do some like investigating after the fact. But the way we have an emergency response manual, this thing was like a small phone book, different phases. It's like we are in phase 1 now, whatever. I'd have to put riflemen up on the roof of the district station. Every district station had riflemen up on the roof.
Wow.
It was all locked down, and you didn't know when you were going to go home. If you were on duty, you weren't going home. You were extended indefinitely. The dispatcher would go over the air and it's like, be advised, day shift, you are extended indefinitely.
Oh, the worst words to hear.
Oh, you got that right. So I was like, okay, I guess it could be worse. So of course there was all kinds of Molotov cocktails. We have a major incident response team. It's called the MERC team. And it's more or less the riot squad. And they would just be driving around quelling just disturbances. The people in the neighborhood just started setting fire to all the businesses.
So these are the guys with the turtle shell costumes and the big
Yes.
long
Yep.
nightsticks. The extra
Exactly.
long nightstick.
Yeah, and, the FBI came, all the adjacent suburbs came. We had a parking lot full of Bearcats, and that was more or less just. It got to the point where it's like you had to just let them do whatever they're gonna do and just clean up later. We didn't have enough people. Period.
Yeah.
And just hope that it just ends. I mean, yeah, there would be mass arrests, there'd be this or that, but the chief completely mismanaged that whole situation. It got out of control quickly. If you would have arrested everyone very quickly and just taken care of business, it would have stopped right there. Or leave. Hey, you know what? At least get this body out of here. That was the sticking point.
Yeah.
If you could, I understand it's a homicide scene, and investigators are used to working at a snail's pace, and they kind of have to, everything slows down, but the world doesn't, agree with you sometimes. And that's what happened. A good friend of mine, he was, the district captain of the district where this happened. He actually closed the district, which is unheard of. He locked the doors and we're like, we're closed.
No foot traffic
Nobody's
allowed.
Yep. Nobody coming in.
Wow. Dang, man. Do you ever find yourself on a line, like with a big crowd or anything like that? Or were you just in the cruiser with your stuff?
Not for that one. I was backfilling to do assignments because they were pulling cops from my district to go to that. Well, somebody's got to take, the DV. Somebody's got to take crime doesn't stop happening.
The calls still come
one
in.
part of the city. Right. They just keep on coming. But, as a cop and as a sergeant, I've been in a bunch of, let's just say, disturbances where you're completely outnumbered. People are throwing rocks and bricks at you and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was New Year's Eve in front of an all-black biker bar called Throttle Twisters. And it was way over like maybe 200 or 300 people rioting in the street. And there was maybe 10 of us, if.
Ooh.
And we're just trying to push the crowd back, etc. Then the gunfire started, and a bullet went about a foot from my head. It hit the building next to me. And I couldn't return fire because I didn't see a muzzle flash, and it was just a sea of people.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Ooh, that was close." I'm not liking this. This is not good. So what we did was we got a bread van, like wholesome bread or
like the old
Wonder Bread
SWAT
or whatever.
vehicle, the big square.
Yes, exactly. We had those, and we just ordered one of those up, and we just started tossing people in it. We just started arresting people. And once they saw that the ones with the biggest mouths and were causing the most damage, we were just hooking and booking. We were just hook them up, throw them in. We arrested 20 people in 15 minutes. And, and they saw we were doing that, and it's like, okay, that's enough of this.
Yeah.
They all was like, okay, I don't want to go to jail tonight. It's New Year's Eve, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. You gotta hit them hard like that. And you can't help but wonder, like, what if they just did that in like the Chaz zone in Washington? You know what I mean? Like, what if they just sent the cops in and said, get them out of there? It would.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the whole point.
They could have taken care of that situation so quickly. It's like, you know what? You have a plan. You have the right people doing it. And you go in there and you start arresting people. Right. It's amazing what'll happen. And, and like I said, the right people, because sometimes cops, they're human beings. They'll get excited, whatever, and they'll break the line and go running after somebody. That's the worst thing in the world you can do. Yeah. No, you got to stay together. It's like 300. It's like, where's your strength? From the person next to you. That's where your strength is. You just got to keep that line, man.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of coverage of some of those, and you can see when the crowd is really big, not all, but some of the cops, you can see either they're newer or they're just straight up scared shitless. You can see it in their face. And I don't blame them. That's terrifying, that a sea of humanity where, if that mob made the decision, even with your guns, you wouldn't be able to push them back. You'd be done.
Absolutely. But you show that force and it's got to be professional. It's got to be in uniform, and you have good training and tactics are key to surviving something like that.
Yeah, because the public, they need to see you executing like that, because that's part of what
Yep.
breaks it up. Like, all right, they know what they're doing. And
Absolutely. And I don't want to, if you wanted to or whatever, but like with ICE in Minnesota, there's so many issues with that. And I think it's a complete breakdown in leadership from Washington to the mayor to the police chief. It's a complete breakdown to where, hey, we're here. We're going to conduct whatever operations we're going to conduct. Let's sit down and talk about this. Because you have these ICE agents wearing blue jeans and t-shirts and, plate carriers.
it did seem so sloppy. Whenever you saw it on TV, it looked like bedlam. You're like, what the hell's going on?
Right. What they should have had is cooperation with the locals. It's like, no, ma'am, you cannot block this road. You cannot, it's like, yeah, can you be on the sidewalk protesting? Of course you can. But you can't obstruct an arrest. You can't obstruct an investigation. Part, like we talked about before, part of any kind of like riot control or anything like that is presence. A uniform presence with the right equipment. I didn't see anybody with a helmet or a baton, and you take care of that crowd and then go arrest whoever you got to arrest. It's that simple.
Yeah, I kind of felt like watching it. It was like, well, the experts on what you're doing are the cops in the city where you're at. And they've been told not to help you. So you get all these new ICE agents who have never maybe done something like this. And the one person that could give you a real quick FTO isn't allowed to help you. And that's what it looks like. It looks just like a friggin' mess.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a complete breakdown in leadership. Whereas Washington, you should have just forced it. And it's like, okay, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Police Chief, and whoever else. It's like, we have to sit down and maybe make some compromises and figure this out, because the way we're doing it, it ain't working. Right. So let's figure out a way to do this safely and effectively. It's like, we're not going to stop enforcing the law, but we're not going to blindly go in with half-ass trained, agents who are out there solo and the locals aren't helping them.
And they're hostile.
Yeah, exactly. It happened in Chicago too. And the police chief, actually, their superintendent, came out with a great press conference. And he's just like, if you surround a police car, that is an act of aggression. If you box in a police car, that is an act of aggression. You're going to have to accept the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
This is no longer a keyboard warrior thing, or have your little whistle or your megaphone or whatever.
Right. This is real life.
Like, you're being a little social justice warrior. You could get killed. The stakes are very, very high. So stop being stupid, okay? Because bad things are going to happen, and bad things happen in Minnesota because of it.
Yeah, and that's the irony of the whole thing, where that side, the people that hate the police, like to claim that like we're scary and we're out of control and we're untrained, except they feel safe enough to do all this button pushing to us. Oh, yeah. They feel, why do you feel safe enough? Because they know the police have shown so much restraint in the modern era that they can get away with it, because we are so worried about violating the rights, as we should be. We're worried about doing it the right way. Yet they're saying they're just this out of control monster. They'll shoot you on the spot. Oh, really? But you'll bring your kid to the protest and throw something at a cop? Well, I guess you and your kid should have got shot by your logic, but somehow you were brave enough to do it.
Yeah, it's such silliness and stupidity, and just, it's like a bad dream. It just like, not good. Not good at all.
It's a good time to be retired, Patrick.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So we're going on 45 minutes here, but I would like to just throw out just a open question. Do you have any story that you, bizarre, intense, crazy, you haven't told yet, that you want to share with everybody?
I've got so many of them, and they're all in the book, and I've got even more, but probably one, I've got a couple. So one was, we're talking about a crazy, whatever. I called it the all city assist. I've only been in like maybe 10 of those in my career. And that's when, it's Broken Arrow.
Like
send
everybody
me
on duty, go
everyone
here.
in the city. Yeah, everybody in the city, please. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got past the point of the district personnel. I want everybody in the city backing me up today. So what happened was I was with not my regular partner, but a partner. We're inside with an arrest. It's about 2:00 in the morning, and we hear a shooting come over. And it's like, okay, you get an ear for the radio. There's all kinds of chatter on the radio nonstop. And it's like, okay, shooting at the Blues Oasis, 2400 North Holton. So we had a tavern car that were plainclothes. They responded to that because it was at a tavern, and then a district uniform squad responded with them. So we got 4 cops, and they're getting updates on all the neighbors are calling. So you're like, okay, this is real. Because a lot of the shots fired or even a shooting, it's BS.
Right.
Most of the time they are, but not this one. So it's like, okay. And we're listening, and it's like, things are starting to sound hairy. And there's a stack of 4 cops going up a gangway. The 2 uniformed cops are in front. And what happens is they see half of a guy coming out from behind the bar. So they draw down on him. Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. So Sluggo shows his left hand like this, but what they didn't know is he had a 357 in his right hand. It was, hidden by the building. So he comes out like this, and he raises his gun and just starts shooting at the cops.
Ooh.
So the cop that was the first one in the stack dove face down on the ground, and the bullet hit exactly where his head was if he would have stayed.
Oh.
And then, they return fire, and another bullet hits the building next to where one of the coppers from the tavern car was, and frags and blows her glasses off her face.
Damn.
And this is all happening in a second. And over the air, the partner, the guy who almost got his head blown off, he was a Marine. He's like, 53, you want to send us more cars? And you could hear the gun firing. And he was like, yeah, send us more cars. They're shooting at us. And it sounded like he was ordering a pizza,
Yeah.
And everybody stopped at the district. It was like, shit, we all dropped what we were doing, and we all ran out the door. And my partner parks in front of the bar, which is not what you want to do. You want to be a little tactical about
Right.
it, but everyone's excited. By now everything's out the window.
Yeah.
I open the door, and I almost trip on a dead body that's half in the gutter. He's on the sidewalk, and he's like about half of him is like literally in the gutter. So my partner and I look at each other, is like, oh shit. So we can hear all kinds of gunfire still going on and back, and we're like, oh shit. So we go in, and it's a dark bar. I'll never forget it. There's a guy on the ground with his brains oozing out, and he still had a bottle of Budweiser in his hand.
Wow.
He was just drinking a Bud. There was 2 cops by the dartboard, and they were back to back with their guns up, and they were in shock. They were completely in shock. They're like,
Yeah.
and we're like, and all this is still going on in the gang. There's a foot chase. There's all kinds of, there's a copper that we called the Swede. He was this huge, another Marine that the guy who just tried to kill these cops was trying to hop a fence. He grabs him, pile drives him, breaks his collarbone like in half.
Ooh.
And the gun plops out of his waistband.
Nice.
And it's like, he said, I didn't know if that was the guy. He said, otherwise I just would have shot him. And I was like, yeah, oh well, but that's okay.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. But so all this is going on. We're inside the bar, and the cops are pointing behind the bar. So I go around, and there's the bartender dead. He's just staring up at the sky.
Wow.
So that's 3
Everybody
dead
got
bodies.
it.
That's 3 dead bodies.
Damn.
And myself and my partner had to clear the rest of the bar. So we go in back, we clear the bar for bad guys or more dead bodies. And then we look, and there's a door. We open it. Ah, shit. There is a basement bar. Ugh. Okay, here we go.
Oh,
So, and we don't know if, anybody's lurking or if we got more victims. So that was probably the fastest my heart ever raced.
I bet.
Yeah. You had no idea what was coming at you. Zero. So I was like, so we cleared the basement and we come back up, and I didn't notice it, but I was like tripping. There were so many casings on the floor of the bar.
Shell casings from rounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I almost fell on my ass a couple of times. I had
That's
never
nuts.
experienced anything. I mean, I think the most I ever been to was a double homicide. I'd never been to a triple. And I'm just like, holy cow. And all this stuff was going on all at once.
That is, I mean, that is such a high likelihood of shooting somebody by accident. I mean, a
Oh,
dark bar,
yeah.
you're clearing it, someone's running towards you with something in their hand. It's like,
Yep.
oh my, because we all do those videos where it's like you go in and it's like, you know, you're in the back of a, you know, it's like a firearms training. And I always think like, man, I can do it right now. I said, but if there's a crowd of people running at you and you immediately have to make these judgment calls of who's a threat, who isn't, who, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes.
That is intense.
Yeah, it was funny. We had a choir practice that morning.
I bet.
We all went to the local bar, and we're setting up like a little tabletop thing with popcorn, and like, here's the pitcher beer. That's that's the bar. The blah blah blah. And the backstory was that 3 kids came in. They were underage, and they wanted to be served. And the bartender's like, "No, get out of here." So they went back. They had Mac 10s, Uzis. That's why they caused so much mayhem.
Oh my, for being denied.
Yep.
Damn. That, man, that's so,
that's
so screwed up.
I didn't know the story behind the guy in the gutter, but the guy with the Budweiser, he was just a factory worker. He got off work and he just wanted to have a beer. The bartender, I mean, he ain't living the lifestyle of the rich and famous. He's pouring beers in a very questionable neighborhood bar.
Yeah.
Where he's got to deal with all kinds of BS.
Damn, man. Obviously, did they have cocktail waitresses? Was there any employees there that lived?
It was just the bartender.
Oh my God. I can picture the bar in my head from all the movies I've seen, the dive bar in the bad neighborhood.
Oh yeah. Just, that was something. I'll have one more like crazy one for you. I know we're going over on time, but this is interesting. There was a guy that I worked with. We called him Wojo. His last name was a long Polish sounding name so we just called him Wojo. Yeah. And he should have been a stand-up comic. This guy was hilarious. When he'd walk into a room, he always had some zinger. He always had a one-liner. And his big thing was he hated overtime. Couldn't stand overtime. He was not the most tactical cop. He was a very interesting dude. Let's just say that. He was a funny guy. And it's 7:00 in the morning. We get called for someone shooting a rifle out of a 2nd-story window in an apartment building. It was like a 4-family. And 7:00 in the morning, that's odd for that to be happening.
Yeah.
And all the cops were tied up on other stuff. So it was me, I was one man, and Wojo was one man. We're the only 2 one-man cars in the district that night. And it's like, start heading to, the guy shooting the rifle out the window. It's like, okay, first off, I don't like rifle. Long gun with my pea shooter doesn't work out so great, and he's got the tactical advantage. He's on the 2nd story.
Right.
That's not a good thing. So I get on a side channel, Wojo, and I know what he's thinking. F this, I'm getting off on time today. This is a bunch of BS. So I was like, okay. So I get him on a side channel. I'm like, okay, I'm going to park a half block, from where he is. I'm going to be, out of his sight, and we're going to tactically walk up on this guy. And he's like, yeah, sure we are. And that's the last thing I heard from him on the radio. And I'm just like,
there's my partner.
So, yep. So I get there and I take the shotgun out of the rack, the good old Remington 870. That's what we had for a long gun. Yes. So I'm creeping up. I'm using cover and concealment. I'm doing all this stuff. And I take a peek. There's Wojo's squad car in front of the house where this guy is shooting a rifle. Literally right in front. And I'm like, oh, Wojo. So I creep up there. Now I'm like almost running because I'm like, oh shit. This is going to go to shit really fast. So the front door of this 4-family is open. And I could kind of hear muffled voices upstairs. So I get up the stairs, being all, tactical with the shotgun, and I'm up there, and there's a door open to an apartment. And I'm like, okay. So I creep up in there, and there's Wojo with his gun out, and he's talking to somebody, and I could tell he's stressed. And I'm like, okay. So I try to get a good advantage, and I take a peek with my shotgun at the low ready. Here's a guy laying in bed, sweating profusely, just wearing his boxers, with a rifle to a 6-year-old kid's head.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, oh
wow.
And Wojo's kind of getting a good conversation going with this guy, and all I could think of is like, I gotta take a shot. And it's like, well, the shotgun is not going to work because it spreads. We had 00 buck. So this is, if I had an M4, it'd be perfect, but not this shotgun. This is not perfect. So, and we didn't have slings because it looked too military-ish. The chief didn't want us to have slings. And I'm like,
crazy.
Now I've got this. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with this thing? Because I didn't know if there was any other threats. I don't want to put it on the ground, but I had to. So I'm like, okay. So I got my Glock out, and I'm trying to get a good angle where I could shoot this guy in the head. But his finger was not on the trigger of the rifle. Thank God. This poor kid is whimpering and crying, and I'm just like,
terrifying.
And finally, Wojo, he actually brought a peaceful conclusion to all this. And the way he did it was, he's like, hey, dude, he says, I hate overtime. You hear those sirens in the background? You could hear sirens in the background. That's our SWAT team. There's going to be negotiators. This is going to be an all-day effing affair. I don't want to be here all day. Why don't you be a man, stop being a pussy, put the rifle down, stand up so I can handcuff you and get this over with. I know I'm going to be here on overtime, but I don't want to be here till midnight doing this shit. And the guy looked at both of us, and he was like, all right. Drops the rifle, stands up, and we handcuff him.
Wojo always wins.
And as we're leaving the building, I've got my shotgun, and then I got his rifle, and the kid went to it. It was his kid. It was a custody dispute with his baby mama. He decided that's how he's going to solve his problems, is by doing this, and he would, that was the end of it. And as we're walking out, I've got a shotgun in one hand, a rifle in the other, and he's got, Joey Sluggo in handcuffs. Here comes the negotiators and the TAC unit and all this other stuff. I was like, don't worry, guys, we got this.
I'll be punching out now. Goodbye.
I mean, we still worked overtime. Don't get me wrong, but it was nothing like what it could have been. That's for sure.
Wow, that is wild, man. That is wild. Because usually, like you said before, a call like that would just be like nothing. Maybe somebody pointed an air rifle out the window. Or, some people are reporting parties see all kinds of things and jump to conclusions, and then you show up and it's like, oh, okay. But in this case, that's crazy.
Yeah, our boss wrote us up for a commendation, and they denied it.
Really?
The brass denied it. Yep. The brass denied it.
Wow. You think they'd be looking for any reason to approve those,
No, not back then. Hell no. It was so funny because back then, if there was a report of a fire, we'd be hauling ass going to them. It's like, well, that's a day off. If I run into a house on fire and save somebody, I know I'm getting a day off. I'm getting an award for that one. They can't deny that. So everyone's tripping over each other's like, ooh, a fire. Cool. I just saw that. Oh, look, there's a day off. So, okay, let's go.
Oh, that's funny, dude. Yeah. Now we need all the PR we can get. You know what I mean?
Oh, you got that right.
Let me just go ahead and add my picture to the screen. There I am.
There he is. There you are.
Patrick, Police Stories, the rookie years. It's out now. Amazon, the best place to get it?
Yes, sir.
How many stories are in this bad boy?
34.
You're kidding me.
I had so much fun writing this book because it's 34 chapters, 34 different stories, all from my rookie years.
You could be the all-time most useful person to be friends with if you host a podcast. with the amount of stories you have, dude. If I'm just being totally honest, that's incredible, dude. Every time you come on, you say you start a story and it ends up being one of the craziest stories I've heard. And you've got 34 of them in print right here, just from the rookie years.
Yes.
That's awesome, dude.
And you know what? That does not make me unique in any way, shape, or form. All the other cops I work with, if they wrote books, they could do the same exact thing.
It is funny too. Like when you talk to somebody who worked a big city for years, they have them, and either they don't care to like recall them, or they just don't want, or they just know they can't spin a yarn. So it's like they don't really.
Yeah, that's true too.
They don't want to share them, but
right.
Dude, that's awesome. So link will be in the show notes for that. Amazon is the best place, correct? You don't want them going right to the publisher or anything.
No. Just Amazon, and I self-published this one. The last book I self-published, and then 4 books before that I had a publisher, and I'd much rather do it my own. And the ones that I did before that I did on my own as well.
Okay, and we can't forget Cops and Writers podcasts also.
Yes,
check that out because we share a lot of guests.
We do. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, and thank you. You've sent me some as well. A lot of times after I'm done chatting with the guests, and they're an author, and they're like, is there a podcast that maybe like I'd be a good fit for? I'm like, there's actually a podcast for exactly what you're doing, and it's Patrick's. Do you still do that that summit? You do that once a year?
No, I did it 1 year. I did Cop Camp where I had authors come in, but we lost our venue. So if I can get another venue, I'll do it again.
Okay, yeah. I've been telling people you still do it, so I'll stop doing that.
All right.
Like authors that are cops, I'm like, you got to go to this thing that Patrick puts on. That'd be sweet. I understand, though. Those things are very, they can be very costly if you don't have it set up right.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I learned some very, very valuable lessons running that one because, I lost my shirt on that. But, hey, I had a lot of fun. What the heck?
Yeah. It's very cool, man. Well, Patrick, honor to have you as always, sir. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the most excellent stories.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Always a blast, and always would want to come back.
All right. I'd love to hear it. All right, brother. I'm going to go do the outro to the show. Can you hang on for just like 2 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. The great Patrick O'Donnell never disappoints. Great episode. Thank you to him. And check out his new book. I guarantee you it's a banger. This is a time in the show where I think the Patreon sponsors, if you decide you've watched all the free content, you decide you want to support old Stevie Boy monetarily, you can do that through Patreon. The link is in the show notes. Who I'm talking about, these are the lieutenants. The great and powerful Andy Biggs. Kyle Roberts, everybody. Brad Thompson, Big Bear Investigations. Check him out on Instagram. Mike Roach, Roach Machines AI Solutions. Check him out. Now the sergeants, the great and handsome Lane Campbell. Gary Steiner, everybody. Love me some Gary. Adam Mihal, thank you very much. The great Seth Wright. Lauren Stimson, thank you, Madame. The great Jason Lau. Sasha McNabb, everybody. Thank you, Sasha. Sean Clifford. Tammy Walsh, holding it down dispatch. Thank you, Tammy. George Tessier, love you, buddy. See you at church. Dennis Carrasquillo, my man. Thank you. Scott Young. Thank you, sir. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, amazing woodworker. Check him out on Instagram. Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys. Hope you're enjoying Wyoming. The great Raymond Arsenal, my man. Thank you, sir. Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother. Stay safe out there on the roads. Elliot Sykes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Elliot. Clark Luckhuff, my man. The great Adam McMahon, thank you. Sheriff Ronald Long, thank you, Sheriff. Zachary Pleat, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Zachary. The great Jason Labrie. Lisa Gano, thank you, Lisa. Sherry Finch, thank you so much. The great Eric Smith. Jackson Dalton from Black Box Safety, check them out. Thank you, Jackson. The great Brett Lee. Alex Wazik, thank you, sir. The great Lauren Smith and the venerable Yvonne True Love. Thank you so much for the support, you guys. That list grows, and I truly appreciate you. And guess what? I love you, and I'll see you next time.